Thank you very much, Dimitrios Buhalis, for joining us. A good friend and collaborator with our university too. I think he supported me quite often during my academic life, and many others. Barbara Neuhofer, for example. You saw that I had this huge pizza with her. Uh, and we were talking about you, and I know how supportive you are, especially for PhDs and younger scholars. I'm very glad that you join us now. You're at Bournemouth University, Professor. You're an expert in many issues, maybe in strategic management, backlash, tourism management, IT-related stuff. His other colleagues do not look at his Google citation. That's for us it's depressing, but it's amazing how many articles you publish that are kind of they're quoted as much as kind of standard books in tourism research. Just think of tourism management, the destination marketing article, which is now kind of a standard destination marketing article itself. So I think today you said you like to give us an insight into this, because we talked about smartness and smart regions and smart cities. And certainly we always talk about COVID-19 too. It's hard to talk about all these issues without having COVID-19 also taking it into account. And thank you for your time. We have half an hour. Also, we might include some questions. I will look at the chat then, and maybe we then can invite some people by joining us with a microphone. Okay, thank you, Dimitrios. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for your kind words. I'm just old, guys. We all used to be much younger, and I remember Mike when he was really young, and we had some fantastic times together. And over the years, we've contributed quite a lot into the literature, and I think this is recognized. Great to be with you virtually and digitally, and to share some of the views. Now, I've followed some of the presentations before. Monday was crazy because I was teaching all day, so I wasn't able to do anything on Monday, but I did some yesterday. I saw Aris and a couple of other colleagues, and then I did a little bit today as well, like Olivier this morning. So I've kind of seen some of your discussions you had. So I may actually spend a little bit more time on things that they are not so much technology or smart related. And I'd like to, let me see if I can share my screen. And I really want to look into a little bit on the issues that we're facing and how we take things forward. I think a lot of the conversation has been about solidarity, and a lot of conversations has been about how we manage this crisis. And COVID is a crisis unlike any other because we don't have an end day. So most of the crises we had so far, it was really a very specific period. So September 11 happened over 4 hours, and then we went to recovery mode. Tsunamis normally take about 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then we're going to recovery mode. COVID, I think we've been for about 9 months already, and still going, and we don't know when we'll be able to get out of that. And this is Bournemouth Easter last year, and this is Bournemouth Easter this year. The difference is spectacular, and we've all been suffering. Having said that, 2020 was about to become an absolutely great year. And everybody that I'm talking to in tourism had a fantastic year planned, and the bookings were coming very, very, very fast. And of course, COVID stopped all of this. And we told people, please don't travel, or see you later. A lot of the planes have parked on airplanes. This is British Airways aircraft in Bournemouth Airport, and that's not very healthy for them to be in an airport sitting down waiting to be called again. I started very early. I started from February because some of you will know I was in Greece with my mother in hospital, and I could pick up a lot of the medical information that was coming through. And I started calling for humanity, solidarity, leadership, and resilience. A lot of people were kind of crying, oh my God, this is a terrible disease. In the beginning, we saw that this is happening in Asia, in China, wherever. It's not going to come to us. Then it started coming to Italy, Spain, and a lot of other places. And we start realizing that it's going to hit us. But a lot of colleagues and friends were almost in denial. They said, it cannot happen to me, you know. And yes, I know it's a horrible thing, but it shouldn't really happen. And I start saying, look, it's a crisis, it's a disaster, and if we stick together, we'll probably have a much better time together. So I start asking for humanity, solidarity, leadership, and resilience. And solidarity means that it's not what tourism, what the community does for tourism and hospitality, but what tourism and hospitality is doing for community. And we had a lot of good examples of that. And WTO started calling for solidarity and commitment. And I started very early. I started from the 3rd of March, calling brace, brace, brace. Specifically, at that time, I spent about 2 to 3 months in Greece this year because of my mother, and a lot of my friends were asking me what's going to happen. And I said, look, what's going to happen is really, really difficult. Nobody can predict. But by the 1st of April, I predicted that tourism is going to go to ground zero. And all of these things are on my blog, and I had a very long conversation, a very long justification saying what's going to happen. But I think the most critical thing, and that's something I'd like you to take away, is that we're going from me to we. And I think one thing that COVID has brought forward is the need to actually do things for society and get together. And a lot of companies started doing things like providing food or hospitality to those in the first line, or the medical people who are fighting with the disease, and everybody who needed some kind of support. People start cooking for hospitals and people who are in difficult kind of situations. And one of my heroes is this company that I do not know. It's in Greece, in Rhodes, and it's called Tomarouli, which means the lettuce. And what they start doing is they start producing food for people that they needed food. So they will leave 200 portions out of their door every day and say, take whatever you need, help yourself. And then they create the community, and people were bringing them raw material like pasta, oil and things like that, and they were cooking. So they create a community of support around them. This is a vegetarian restaurant. I'm not a vegetarian, but I'll go and visit them at the first opportunity to actually give them something back, and also to thank them for what they've done. Solidarity is absolutely critical. And I think in tourism hospitality, we are almost trained, or it's internal to us, to look after other people. And I think that is the time that we actually excel. Now, as far as the tourism industry is concerned, I started this hashtag Reignite Tourism because it's really about how we're going to go. But we need to realize that we're not returning back from where we left. We're going to a new reality, and the new reality is going to be different to before. Now, people will still travel, and people will always like to do the experience that they're doing. But I think looking at the past is not the best way of looking at the future. The past is becoming irrelevant. And I think we really need to design where is that future is. Now, the good thing is that we are blessed with assets, with products, with branding, with co-creation, with experience, with the local people, with differentiation and authenticity. And all of those things have not gone away. They're still there. And they're still there to be enjoyed. And one of the good things about COVID is it actually hasn't destroyed anything. It hasn't destroyed the infrastructure. It hasn't destroyed the superstructure. I created a kind of strategic response framework, which at some stage I'll have the time to write it down. But it's really about, during the crisis, you really need to look after safety, and you need to look after people, not only yourself, but your staff and your customers, and provide humanitarian aid, support the community, and support health in general. And I started shouting very early, we really need to look after liquidity and to make sure that finance is okay. but also primarily we need to look after our relationships and the communication with our partners, suppliers, distributors. And there was a big issue at the time about reservations and cancellations and refunds in particular. In the beginning, a lot of people kind of tried not to provide refunds, and it created a huge range of conversations about what do we do with refunds. But then I think the most important thing was looking to how can we be smart, alert, and agile, and to keep the engine warm, to be able to find ways that we're going to manage in a better way. So some of the keep engine warm strategies was the bubbles or the bridges or a lot of the things that they came afterwards. I think in terms of strategic response, you've got things that they've got to do with your human strategies and the talent management. You've got things to do with the money and the banks and the investment side. You've got things to do with operations. And we spend a lot of time talking about operations and protocols and how can we operate in a safer way. We've seen a lot of things about product proposition, how we can re-engineer the product within the COVID area and how we're going to go later. We looked into pricing and distribution and how we're going to operate with the distributors framework to manage in a better way, and strategic response and destination strategies. Those things were all kind of things that a destination should have looked at and decided for themselves operationally and strategically. So some of my colleagues in different destinations were calling me and say, should we open tourism or not? And some of my hotelier friends were asking, should I open or how should I open? What kind of protocols should I follow? And I managed to steal a lot of protocols from many different organizations and distribute them. And primarily, I managed to find the Asian protocols. Because Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Singapore have got some very, very strict protocols, and they have experienced SARS and different things in the past. So they were 10 years ahead of us. So in February, I was able to collect a lot of those things and send them to key decision makers and say, start with those. Do not start from nothing. Do not start by asking doctors and epidemiologists for the first time. Start from that, because a lot of our colleagues in Asia, they've done it 10 years ago and they've been updating these things. So, and a lot of economic and business model strategies were based on this kind of situations. And I used to say, depending on where you are and how you operate, what kind of clientele you've got, it's really critical that you do that. And I think every day we just realize how important it is that the customers are co-creating the experience, and not only the way that we used to talk with Barbara and several other colleagues about co-creation of experience in terms of the value, but the key value now is safety and security. The value of safety and security is co-created with our customers, and the responsibility of the customers and the organization to make sure that we are safe and secure for everybody. And I had a question this morning to Olivier, should the police, I think Sean asked this question, should the hotels become the police of the customers? Yes, they must do. And you must kick out whoever is not playing the game, because if they're putting, it's a social kind of responsibility, and they put everybody into danger, themselves and everybody else. So we really have to make sure that the customers that we've got are only those who can, that they can operate within the COVID constraints. Otherwise, they put themselves and everybody else and the other customers and the community in danger. So, and that was a big issue. If you remember, in the beginning of the year, in the beginning of the summer, in June, the weather was wonderful. A lot of people came to Bournemouth, and everybody was screaming, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" And a lot of these people, and the government and the local government of Bournemouth went straight out, and they were trying to do something, but they had to deal with 500,000 people. So they brought some emergency state of alert. I don't remember what's the terminology exactly, to be able to manage the situation and manage the destination. I think the critical thing is to really be COVID ready in terms of being smart, have protocols, process, and get the agility of the entire ecosystem. The agility of the entire ecosystem is really, really complicated. And many of you would have heard me about talking about real-time systems and picking up all the signals and all the rest of it. But it's really, really complicated because everything is changing rapidly. So on the 13th of September, Greece opened cruises and allowed the first TUI cruise ship to go on a cruise. 2 days ago, there was an announcement that 12 members of staff had COVID, crew members. And the ship was ordered to go to Athens, and then they did more tests. And then they realized that actually the first test that they've done was wrong, and nobody had COVID. So you can see the disruption and how many people are engaged in this kind of thing, and how many people and how many people are really involved in a crisis like that, which luckily in this case were not an issue, but it could have been an issue like the cruise ships that they were in the Caribbean in beginning of the season, and they were going around until the Minister of Tourism of Jamaica found a solution for them to be able to repatriate all kind of repatriate people to all kind of places. We really need to understand real-time information and context-based information on location. We really need to understand the clientele and operate with the clientele, and a lot of track and trace applications are coming forward. But the most important thing is that the clientele needs to be responsible for those things. And the clientele needs to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And we find the same thing with students now, going back to universities. A lot of people are asking, can you please bring me back to my normal life? While the situation is that it's not a normal life, because then the environment is not normal. So we really need to adjust to our environment. It's really critical to understand our space and understand where and how we can actually operate. And it's really important to understand our architecture. And that determines what kind of activities people can take and where they are. We need to look after our service and redesign service in a way that we can operate. A lot of people, for example, this year they provided breakfast on a takeaway kind of basis, or they were serving in your rooms, or they were doing all kinds of different things. And we need to get our personnel involved in those things. And it's really, really critical that we look after our personnel. And process and business models have got to change in order to manage the situation that we've got currently, because the environment has changed. So I don't want to spend awfully a lot of time, but I think we are going towards a gradual reignite of the economic engine. And a lot of people are talking about tourism as being affected, but I think everything's affected. But tourism is, we see the tourism industry more than a lot of other industries. Because I don't know anybody who has changed their car for the last 8 months or 10 months, but nobody's talking about the car manufacturing yet, because so we really need to reignite the industry, but we need to reignite the industry in a safe way that protects people, it protects our customers, and protects our communities. We need to refocus on what we're doing, and we need to redesign some of the tourism production we're doing. And in the last 3 months, I've had all kinds of people having an opinion, how do they like their tourism to happen? And it's very dangerous, because a lot of people feel that they've got the expertise to be able to determine what tourism should look like in the future. But us as tourism professionals and tourism researchers, we really need to look into detail, and we really need to identify all the things that we were not proud of in the past, and look into how we will be able to restructure and redesign our industry, and how we can re-engineer experiences in a way that everybody gets benefits in this value chain. I think I'm going to leave you with that, Michael, because I can go for another 3 hours, but I'm sure that you've got other things to do. I've decided not to talk a little bit, not to talk about technology so much, because I think it's really critical at this stage to understand how we really focus on solidarity and look after our communities. And what's really critical is how can we get tourism and hospitality to support communities and to engage all our resources to actually get this COVID threat away. In fact, if you were in agriculture, you'll probably see that a lot of in many occasions, the fields, they had to be left alone for a year so they can recuperate, or you had a lot of disasters that they were happening in terms of your environment, and you may have not had a good year. I think we need to treat it like that. And of course, after every storm, there is a rainbow and better days are coming ahead. But it's really about keeping everybody out under our umbrella and making sure that we can be healthy and happy to travel in the next stage. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dimitrios. So can you hear me? Yeah, you can. Huh?
Yes, I can.
Fine. So thank you for that. I think quite positive contribution. You know, we had in the also yesterday when we talked with Marina and others from, you know, especially the industry speakers, they all said more or less, you know, we need to keep our heads over the water and kind of try to, you know, work together, collaborate, be optimistic also in our forecasts and not too negative. And so that is quite also what you said. I think there's one question that just came from maybe Sean. You want to, Sean?
Yes.
From
Hello, Dimitrios.
Hi, Sean. How are you doing?
Thank you for a lovely presentation. I have a question for you, but it's more of a scenario that I came across way back in March at the start of all this nonsense that suggested that the way forward with COVID would be real-time testing at airports. So the idea they were proposing is you would go to an airport to check in for your flight, you'd be tested at the airport and you'd receive your results prior to boarding the aircraft. And that way everybody on the aircraft, including the crew, would know that everybody on board was COVID negative. Is that the only way we're ever going to get back to any kind of normal levels of travel? We've seen the whole aviation industry implode. People aren't traveling. People are very reluctant to go anywhere. So the testing model is possibly the only solution, you know, being able to provide testing. And I know Heathrow looked into putting a testing center into Heathrow there for arriving passengers, but that doesn't cover the departing passengers.
I think that's one solution, and I think there's a movement right now in the UK from the Heathrow Airport and most of the biggest airlines to have something like that happening. I'm not an expert on tests and how they operate. My understanding is that they're not as reliable as they sound.
Okay.
And the situation with the cruising in Greece just confirmed that. And there were several occasions in the last 6 months where people were either tested positive and they were negative, and they were negative and they were positive, and all kind of things. It's a mess. And I think there are 2 or 3 different types of tests, and people are not really very clear on which test they are talking about. But I think the industry is pushing for that. So is it reliable or not? I don't know. I think our best bet is the 4 things that they keep telling us: wear masks when you're with people, wash hands, keep distance, and avoid crowded areas. And I'll add one more thing, because since February, that has been my new mission of life. Please give blood and ask your students to give blood, because that is a lot of people need blood in hospitals right now, everywhere in the world, and everybody that is affected by COVID, every area has got a requirement for blood. And I think that is really, really important. Please give blood and ask your students to give blood as well. But going back to your question, Sean, I'm not sure if we've got a reliable kind of thing. It's one of the measures.
Yeah.
There's a lot of issues about what's going to happen. You go there and you're positive. In the meanwhile, you have kind of affected a lot of other people. What's going to happen? You know, you have got a ticket to fly. We may see people lying or kind of, yeah, but my plan will be disrupted. It's a social behavior that's happening in all those things. It's really complicated.
And I think we've lost, you know, we captured the world's imagination early on in this. People bought into the idea of the 4 different ways of coping with this, as you've just outlined there. But I think at this stage now, 6 months later, people have lost interest. You know, we've become overwhelmed with the enormity of this and how it's impacting our lives. And I certainly see it here in Ireland that the goodwill that was present in the country 6 months ago, it certainly has dissipated, and people are now giving out to each other and pointing at people who don't wear masks, and not in a very nice way. And it's not a pleasant environment anymore, I have to say.
Let's remind ourselves, 1 million people
Have died,
have
yes.
lost their lives. I think, you know, and I increasingly I see about 20 to 30% of the people having antisocial behavior. And of course, everybody's tired. You know, I'd like to be with you in Innsbruck and meet
yes.
my friends and do all kind of things.
Yeah.
As a little secret, I went a couple of days ago. I went around and I bought suitcases because I can, you know, that's the first step to traveling. But I think it's really critical that we don't lose perspective. I think a lot of people are losing their jobs.
Yeah.
A lot of people are losing their lives. A lot of people who are recovering from COVID, they've got long-lasting effects. And to be perfectly honest with you, the inconvenience of stay put for a while, it's kind of much less than a lot of the other consequences that we can have. And I think people will need to mature about these things. Mm-hmm. And, you know, to look after, you know, I've got colleagues and friends who have not worked in the summer. You know, people who will go and work as waiters to generate 10,000 euros to last them for the year. They haven't managed to do it. I've got people who went to start working in the summer, but actually there was not enough customers, so they had to lay them off. I had colleagues who are operating properties that they couldn't operate. My sister has not worked since March. And, you know, so there are a lot of people who are affected by this, and it's actually not only in tourism hospitality, it's in all kind of sides of the society. And I think we need to be mature. And I think those 20 to 30% of the population who is tired or cannot have a social behavior that is accepted, that is appropriate for this kind of environment, they need to somehow come back to their senses. It's the same thing like drink driving or smoking in small places. Antisocial behavior is affecting everybody. So, and on this particular occasion, the problem we've got is that the danger is invisible. So we cannot, you know, if we are going together for a beer, you cannot be sure that I'm safe, and I cannot be sure that you're safe. So for this period of time, I know it's inconvenience. I know that nobody really likes to isolate. And actually, there are two major benefits out of COVID, I think. I think the first thing is that people just realized how important tourism is for themselves, for their mental health, for their ability to socialize. And I think for the first time ever, governments had to wake up and smell the coffee on what tourism means, especially for peripheral areas, islands, and the European periphery. And the second thing that became very important through COVID is the understanding on how important collective action is. For the last 7 or 8 months, I've been non-stop talking to industry events, academic events everywhere in the world, because and COVID actually brought us closer together. In the past, 200 of us will go to Bonn for the previous TTRA conference, or we'll come to Innsbruck and we'll have a conversation. Now, everything that we do is going to thousands of people. And that's why I said to Mike earlier, let's keep the videos.
Yes, the recording.
Let's spread the videos to everybody around the world, because a lot of people in India, a lot of people all over the world, they're desperately looking for understanding what's happening and help their societies on how we do. And I think that's our responsibility, if you like, as first world country, to support the world in dealing with this terrible thing. It's going to go away, guys. It's going to take some time, and the medical guys and the medical research is doing fantastically well in producing, you know, experiments. I don't know, 68 or so, whatever number it is of vaccines that are under preparation. So many of them on the third stage and things like that. It's going to go away, but for the time being, we need everybody under the umbrella, everybody safe. We need to make sure that those 20-30% of the population who is not following the rules and they're putting themselves and everybody else in danger, that they understand their responsibility. And we need to stick together. Stick together and we'll see the rainbow.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Dimitrios.
Thank you, Dimitrios. Just one question before I hand over to Franz. Research. There are some, probably also strange special issues out there, and I mean, there is research that's important and less important about COVID-19. What do you think? Is that also a research stream that we should focus on from tourism research side? These collaboration issues and community orientation, or what would you recommend as a researcher?
I think as an editor of Tourism Review, I've seen so many papers coming on my desk on COVID, and they're all half-cooked kind of last-minute thing that the people have trying to research and put that forward. I think COVID is part of the crisis management kind of situation and pandemics, and we hadn't had a pandemic for everybody around the world that has been so much affected. So that's a very strong research agenda. But I think from my perspective as a researcher, I think what COVID has created a huge need for real-time, reliable information that there's location and context-based. And I think the stuff that I was writing about real-time, which was primarily about how do we engage everybody in co-creation by bringing real-time information, now it's much more critical than ever. And it's much more critical than ever because if I want to come to Innsbruck, I had to see what was the situation at the place of origin in real time. Would that be safe for me to go to the airport? What would be the situation of the transit region? And what will be the situation in Innsbruck? And then all the way back to Bournemouth. That means that we need to have reliable information, forecasts, and to understand what's happening in our context, in order to make sure that our safety is addressed.
Very good point.
I think for me that is the smartness. The smartness is really understanding the information, and because there's a lot of information, to find out what's real information, what's fake information, and engage in this dynamic kind of side of co-creation. So and it's very important that when our guests, our customers, our travelers are out there, that they are able to access points of help and reference to enable them to enjoy their experience. And something I haven't said, Bournemouth this summer had a fantastic year because of staycation. A lot of the British travelers that they would normally have gone to Greece or Spain or somewhere away, they stayed here, and actually they actually, a lot of them, they came to Bournemouth. So it's not all bad. I guess Innsbruck has probably done very well because a lot of people drove from Germany or from other parts of Austria and different bits, drove into places. So a lot of destinations actually have done much better. Those who have suffered a lot are islands and those that they require a flight, and long-haul destinations that they require the long-haul flight.
Yeah, we had certainly city tourism is suffering. Innsbruck, for example, but all the rural regions around, they were quite successful during these times, yeah, because of domestic tourism.
I think it's this time that we follow the protocols, we follow the advice, and we try to help each other, and we give blood, and it's a storm, it's going to go away, and we're going to have a rainbow coming afterwards.
Okay, so I'm just checking whether there are more questions in the chat. Is there anybody who wants to take the micro and ask something? Oh, there is somebody here in the hall, Florian Zach from Virginia Tech. He's with us here because he's originally from Innsbruck. That's the reason why it did not flew over.
Okay. Hi, Dimitrios. Thanks for your presentation. I just have let's say I want to play devil's advocate. So the question is, should we actually try to get tourism back or should we try to refocus tourism from, let's call it like this whole, I'm on camera, from the whole long distance travel to more shorter distance travel, like what you just described was very accurate for Austria. For like people travel shorter distances, it might be more beneficial for the environment, or at least postpone long distance travel until airlines can fly with much more fuel efficient planes or electric planes. I'm just curious what your thought is on that. Like sometimes I'm pondering if we should actually bring tourism back full circle. Thanks.
Well, this is a political question in a sense, and I'll tell you why. I hear a lot of colleagues who are concentrating on sustainability, advocating that this is an opportunity to get the planet stop going, not traveling, and to do different things. I think it's one perspective. The problem we have got in several places when tourism stops, life stops. And I had a lot of colleagues and friends who were telling me, look, if I'm not gonna die from COVID, I'm gonna die from starvation. Because if I cannot bring tourists to come to my island and operate in the summer and bring some money in, I will not be able to afford food, and I'm not going to be able to afford all the other things. I think I hear the sustainability arguments, and everybody needs to look into how we can do sustainability. But I think a lot of people are confusing two or three things at the same time. I think what we need to do for the time being, open where it's safe to open, and not open where it's not safe to open. The other thing is it's really critical to understand what we should open and what we should not open. For example, any service provision that it has got people standing primarily in bars and nightclubs and things like that, it's not safe. Mm-hmm. So strategically, governments, destination management organizations should say, no, we should not open. And we should only open for people that they can sit down. Now, the British government, which really has been quite open about these things, now they brought this regulation at this stage, quite late in the system. So we really need to open what is safe and what's not safe. I think the sustainability question and whether we should reduce tourism, it's another question. And I think we should not reduce tourism, and I don't think the trend is to reduce tourism. But I think the question is, how do we do tourism in a better way? How can we be more sustainable? How can we use technologies? How can we use a whole range of initiatives to actually make sure that we're greening our environment? And how can we make sure that tourism is beneficial for the communities and where we're going, rather than making communities suffer? But I think that the two questions and the two discussions are in parallel, if you like, and we should not advocate for degrowth.
I'm not saying like the decline of tourism, but like, I think it's a refocus, but I think, as you said, it's going to go hand in hand with maybe some sustainability efforts and maybe some other efforts like that escape me now. But I think this is a great opportunity if destinations want to take this chance and refocus. So yeah, I appreciate your insights. Thanks.
Yeah.
So thank you, Florian. There's one final question coming from, so Patrick is closing the Q&A session. Patrick in Angers.
Hello, Dimi, hi.
Hi, ça va?
Oui, ça va. When I see the picture behind you, it makes me remember the last TTRA European conference we have attended on site.
You're always welcome, my friend.
I look forward to visiting you again. My question is, unfortunately, the economical crisis is ahead of us. Whatever the solution regarding the health crisis, and hopefully we'll be able to fight against this virus. More specifically, we know that the public bodies, government at the state level or regional level, have borrowed and spent a lot of money, increasing deficit. Should be afraid of that for the future, and more specifically, if we think about DMOs, we know that a lot of DMOs rely on public funding sometimes. So not just DMOs, but should we be afraid of this economical crisis and huge deficit from public bodies in the future?
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. And I think the problem and the consequences are huge. In reality, this is a war situation. It's basically we will recover from a war with a lot of economic activity going to a standstill. I talked about car manufacturing earlier. Any manufacturing will suffer. The only thing that kept going is the food value chains. Only the food has been working in the same way. I mean, nobody I know has bought any clothes. Nobody I know has bought shoes. And those things. And I think you are right. I think economically, we will kind of the whole world is going to a very difficult situation, and destination management organizations and anybody in the economy will suffer. I think we'll turn it around. We've done it in the past and we'll do it again, but the economic situation will be quite complicated. And I think a lot of people will either lose their job, or they lose their income, or they lose a significant amount of their income. We see that with investments that they're going down. We see that in a lot of economic activities, and we will have to learn how to operate with less. But in Europe, we are much more fortunate than a lot of other places, and I think there is an opportunity to actually reflect a little bit about consumerism, and there's an opportunity to learn how to operate with less. And going back to the umbrella scheme for the storm, we need really to understand how can we protect people in the storm. And the protection is not only about health, it's also economic protection as well. Because there will be a lot of people, a lot of families that wouldn't have sufficient resources to feed their kids. And I think that is a real important catastrophe, if you like, financial catastrophe. And we need as a society to look into how can we actually take care of this situation. As I said, when we've got the vaccine, how long it's going to take, I don't know, but it's going to take a little bit of time. And then a lot of things are going to recover. But we're in war right now. And we've got 1 million casualties. In fact, we've got much more than 1 million. 1 million died in the war. And the predictions from the World Health Organization say it can go to 2 million. Yeah. We cannot pretend that business is as normal. We are going through a very tough situation, and we need to learn how to operate in this environment and then go to the next stage.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much for your question. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Dimitrios, for your insights. I also enjoyed your keynotes at TTRA, and I hope we see each other probably in real time again. Maybe next year, maybe March, April. Let's see. Obviously, the forecasts are quite critical. What we saw is that most of the people think that 2022 might be the year where we'll climb up the ladder, the success ladder again, but I'm not quite sure. Many here say it's already 2022, so all these forecasts are, I guess, rubbish right now. So go have a good time, take care, come through these times well, and all the best for your family. We will keep in touch, okay? Thank you very much, Dimitrios, and also thank you for the listeners on Zoom. I think there was a nice community listening. Please, if you want to take part in the sessions now, you have to go out again and click on the other links of the next 3 sessions. And please stay with us. We will have the farewell session, and maybe also Dimitrios will join us again when we meet Scott in the final session announcing the best presentations, online presentation. There's 1 award and 1 award for the kind of the real presentation here in Innsbruck. Thank you. See you soon.